Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly attract wealth into their lives, while others work tirelessly for years without ever breaking through to true abundance? What if I told you that the answer has nothing to do with how hard you work, how smart you are, or even how lucky you might be? What if the secret to multiplying your money has been hidden in plain sight for over 3,000 years? Quietly passed down through ancient civilizations, whispered in sacred temples, and encoded in manuscripts that very few people ever got to read. Before we dive deep into this fascinating discovery, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos, because what we're exploring today might completely transform the way you think about money forever. Now, here's something that might shock you. The ancient Egyptians knew it. The Babylonian merchants practiced it daily. The Vedic sages taught it in their wisdom schools. Even the Chinese philosophers and Hebrew mystics, civilizations separated by thousands of miles and with no contact with each other, all understood the same fundamental truth about wealth. They called it different names: the golden current, the law of return, the flow of abundance. But they were all describing the exact same invisible force that governs how money moves through our lives. Has this ever happened to you? You've experienced those magical periods where everything just clicks into place, unexpected opportunities arise, the right people appear at exactly the right time, money seems to flow toward you with surprising ease. And then there are those other times, those frustrating stretches where no matter how much effort you pour in, how many hours you work, or how desperately you try, nothing seems to work. Same person, same skills, same world around you, yet completely different results. What changed? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not about working harder or finding some secret investment strategy. It's not about cutting coupons or following the latest financial guru's advice. What the ancients understood, and what modern society has largely forgotten, is that money is not simply paper or digits in a bank account. Money is energy. It's a tangible manifestation of an invisible force that responds to something far more subtle than effort or intelligence. It responds to vibration. Stay with me here, because what you're about to discover might challenge everything you've been taught about wealth creation. Think about gravity for a moment. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but it's undeniably real and affects everything in your physical world. The force that attracts or repels money works in remarkably similar ways. There's a frequency, an energetic signature that you're constantly broadcasting to the universe, and that frequency determines whether wealth flows toward you or away from you. What if I told you that you could actually learn to tune this frequency, to adjust your vibration in a way that makes attracting and multiplying money almost inevitable? The ancient masters knew how to do this, and they guarded this knowledge carefully because they understood its power. But this isn't mysticism or wishful thinking. This is where things get truly fascinating, because we're not talking about some isolated belief system or regional superstition. We're looking at something far more profound, something that transcends culture, language, and geography. Think about this for a moment. The ancient Egyptians, building their magnificent pyramids along the Nile, understood this principle. The Hebrew mystics, studying sacred texts in candlelit chambers, knew this truth. Chinese philosophers contemplating the Tao in mountain monasteries grasped the same concept. The Vedic sages of India, sitting in deep meditation thousands of years before modern civilization, taught this exact same wisdom to their students. These were civilizations that never met, never communicated, never exchanged ideas across oceans and continents. Yet somehow, independently, they all arrived at the identical understanding about how wealth actually works. They called it by different names, of course. The Egyptians spoke of the golden current flowing through all things. The Chinese referred to it as part of the natural flow of Chai, the life force energy. The Hebrews understood it as the law of sowing and reaping, a cosmic principle of return. The Vedic tradition called it the dance of giving and receiving, an eternal cycle that governs all manifestation. But strip away the cultural language, the religious frameworks, the philosophical terminology, and you find they're all describing the exact same invisible force. This wasn't coincidence. This was discovery. They had each independently uncovered a fundamental truth about how reality operates at its deepest level. Now here's where most people get stuck, where the transformation from struggle to flow becomes blocked. We've been conditioned by modern society to think of money as a thing, a physical object separate from ourselves. We see it as paper we exchange, numbers that appear on screens, something external that we must chase, capture, and hold on to with a tight grip. But this perspective, this mindset, is precisely what keeps most people trapped in cycles of financial stress and limitation. The hidden truth that the ancients understood is radically different and far more empowering. Money is not separate from you. It's not something out there that you need to hunt down or compete for. Money is actually an extension of your consciousness, a physical manifestation of your internal energy state. Let that sink in for a moment. Every dollar, every euro, every peso that flows into your life or away from it is responding to the energetic frequency you're broadcasting. When you operate from a vibration of scarcity, when fear and worry dominate your thoughts about finances, when you constantly focus on what you don't have rather than what's possible, money responds by moving away from you. It's not punishing you, it's not judging you, it's simply following the law, responding to the signal you're transmitting. But here's the revelation that changes everything. When you shift your internal state, when you begin vibrating at the frequency of certainty, gratitude, and expansion, something remarkable happens. Money starts flowing toward you as if answering an invisible command. Opportunities appear that weren't there before. Resources materialize from unexpected sources. Doors open that were previously locked. This isn't magic or wishful thinking. This is cause and effect operating at an energetic level that most people simply aren't aware of. The journey from financial struggle to abundance isn't really about learning new strategies or working harder at your job. It's about understanding and then consciously shifting the vibrational frequency you're operating from. Every thought you think about money, every emotion you feel when you check your bank balance, every decision you make about spending or saving is either reinforcing a vibration of scarcity or strengthening a vibration of abundance. And the universe, with mathematical precision, reflects back to you exactly what you're putting out. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding the principle is only the beginning. The real question is, how do you actually shift this vibration? How do you move from unconsciously repelling wealth to consciously attracting it? The ancient masters had specific practices, specific ways of training their consciousness to maintain the frequency that multiplies money rather than diminishes it. Write in the comments, "I'm ready for this shift," if this resonates with you and you're prepared to explore what comes next. Think back to those moments in your own life when everything seemed to click into place effortlessly. Maybe it was a period where job offers came out of nowhere, or someone called you at exactly the right moment with exactly the right opportunity. Perhaps money showed up from unexpected sources, or solutions to problems appeared almost magically. You felt confident, optimistic, aligned with something bigger than yourself. And then, almost inexplicably, that flow stopped. The opportunities dried up. The phone went quiet. Despite working just as hard, maybe even harder, nothing seemed to move forward. Same you, same skills, same intelligence, same daily routines. But something fundamental had shifted beneath the surface. This energy shift pattern is something every single person experiences, yet most go through their entire lives never understanding what's actually happening behind the scenes. They attribute the good periods to luck and the difficult periods to bad timing or external circumstances. But the truth is far more empowering and puts you in complete control. What changed wasn't the world around you. What changed was the energetic frequency you were broadcasting, and everything in your external reality simply rearranged itself to match that internal transformation. Here's what the ancient masters understood that modern society has forgotten. Your emotional state isn't just a feeling happening inside your head. It's an actual energetic signal radiating outward, interacting with the field of possibilities around you, and literally organizing matter and circumstances to reflect back what you're putting out. When you're in a state of flow, when gratitude and certainty dominate your inner world, when you feel expansive and open to receiving, you're transmitting a frequency that attracts matching experiences. Money, opportunities, helpful people, creative solutions all begin moving toward you because you've become a vibrational match for them. If this resonates with you and you want to continue exploring how consciousness creates wealth, subscribe to the channel right now. This is where we dive deep into the principles that actually transform your financial reality, not just talk about them on the surface. But when fear takes over, when scarcity thinking dominates your mindset, when you grip tightly to what little you have out of worry about losing it, you shift to a completely different frequency. And at that frequency, wealth cannot reach you. It's not being withheld from you as punishment. It's simply operating according to law, the same way radio waves only come through when your receiver is tuned to the right station. Change the station, change what comes through. Now, embedded within this understanding is a principle that has the power to completely revolutionize your relationship with money. The ancient traditions called it the law of double return, and it's been tested and proven across thousands of years and countless cultures. Here's how it works. Everything you give to the universe with pure intention and expansive emotion comes back to you multiplied. Not always immediately. Not always in the form you expected, but it returns mathematically, predictably, as reliably as gravity pulls objects toward Earth. Most people miss this entirely because they're operating from the wrong paradigm. They think in terms of transactions, of tit for tat, of protecting what they have, because resources are limited, and if they give something away, they'll have less. This scarcity mindset creates a closed system where flow becomes impossible. But when you understand that you're working with energy, not just material objects, everything changes. When you give from a place of abundance consciousness, when you contribute your time, your resources, your knowledge, from a genuine desire to add value rather than from obligation or expectation, you're not depleting anything. You're actually setting in motion a return wave that must, by universal law, come back to you amplified. The universe doesn't understand currency or bank accounts. It understands intention and emotion. When you give with an open heart, with genuine joy and expansiveness, you're sending out a powerful signal that says, I have more than enough. I am a source of abundance. Flow moves through me freely. And the universe responds to that signal by organizing circumstances to reflect that truth back to you. Sometimes it returns through the same channel where you gave. Often it returns through completely unexpected avenues, which is why people who don't understand this principle miss the connection entirely. The impact of this revelation on your financial reality cannot be overstated. You're not at the mercy of economic conditions or job markets or lucky breaks. You're working with fundamental laws that govern how energy moves and manifests in the physical world. Every decision you make about giving or withholding, every emotion you attach to money coming in or going out, is either working with these laws or working against them. And the difference in outcomes between these two approaches is not incremental, it's exponential. What most people don't realize is that their financial struggles aren't really about money at all. They're about being trapped in an energetic pattern that continuously recreates the same limiting circumstances. Breaking free doesn't require more effort or better strategies. It requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to abundance itself, moving from scarcity consciousness to flow consciousness, from gripping to allowing, from fear to trust. Drop a comment below with the word flow if you're beginning to see how this applies to your own journey with money. Picture a river for a moment, a clear mountain stream flowing naturally through the landscape. When that water moves freely, unobstructed, something beautiful happens. The current gains momentum, picks up speed, carries nutrients and life to everything downstream. The water stays fresh, clean, vibrant with energy. But watch what happens when you try to dam it up, when you build walls to capture and hold it in one place. At first it might seem like you're protecting your water supply, securing what you have, but soon that trapped water becomes stagnant. It stops moving, stops breathing, stops carrying life. It becomes murky, heavy, lifeless. The very act of trying to protect it destroys its essential nature. Your money operates according to this exact same principle, and understanding this single truth can completely transform your financial reality. Every time you hold on to money out of fear, every time you refuse to let it flow because you're terrified of not having enough, every time you build mental and emotional dams around your resources, you're creating stagnation. And stagnant energy, by its very nature, cannot multiply. It cannot grow. It can only deteriorate. The irony that most people never grasp is that the tighter you grip money out of fear, the faster it slips through your fingers. It shows up as unexpected expenses, as opportunities that fall through, as money that arrives and immediately disappears, for reasons that seem beyond your control. But when you allow money to flow, when you give with confidence and trust that more is always coming, when you operate from a mindset of circulation rather than accumulation, everything shifts. The money that moves through your hands gains momentum. It carries energy. It multiplies. Not because you're being careless or reckless with your resources, but because you're working with the natural laws that govern abundance rather than against them. This is the hidden truth that separates those who continuously expand their wealth from those who perpetually struggle despite their best efforts. Here's where the transformation becomes practical and tangible. Most people have been conditioned to see giving as losing, as making themselves smaller, as having less. This belief system is so deeply ingrained that it operates automatically beneath conscious awareness, sabotaging financial growth at every turn. But what if I told you that giving is actually the most powerful form of investment available to you? Not charity in the guilt-driven sense, not obligation that depletes you, but conscious, intentional planting of seeds in the fertile soil of universal abundance. When you give from the right vibration, from a place of genuine expansiveness rather than scarcity or anxiety, you're not losing anything. You're initiating a cycle of return that operates as reliably as the seasons. Plant a seed in spring, and by fall, you have a harvest that multiplies that single seed 100-fold. Nobody looks at a farmer planting seeds and says he's losing his corn. Everyone understands he's investing in a future harvest. Yet somehow, we've forgotten to apply this same wisdom to money, to energy, to the resources flowing through our lives. The earth doesn't judge the seed. It doesn't evaluate whether the farmer deserves a harvest or analyze his past mistakes. It simply responds to proper conditions. Plant with the right timing, in prepared soil, with adequate water and sunlight, and growth happens automatically. The universe operates identically with the seeds of intention and action you plant through giving. When you give without attachment to how or when the return comes, when you give from overflow rather than depletion, when you give with joy rather than reluctance, you create the perfect conditions for multiplication. The return isn't a hope or a wish. It's a mathematical certainty, encoded in the structure of how energy moves through reality. This is why the ancient merchants who understood these principles prospered while those around them struggled. They weren't smarter or luckier. They had simply discovered that giving from the right consciousness was the ultimate leverage point for attracting wealth. Every transaction became a ritual, an opportunity to plant seeds that would return multiplied. They blessed what they gave. They expressed gratitude for what they received. They maintained the flow rather than trying to dam it up. And their financial realities reflected this internal mastery. The journey from scarcity to abundance isn't about earning more money through sheer force of effort. It's about understanding and embodying the principles that govern how money flows. When you shift from seeing giving as loss to recognizing it as the highest form of investment, when you transform fear-based hoarding into confidence-based circulation, you step into alignment with forces that have been operating since long before modern economics existed. You tap into something ancient, something powerful, something that works whether you believe in it or not, though belief certainly accelerates the results. What's fascinating is how quickly this shift can manifest tangible changes in your financial circumstances once you truly grasp it, not just intellectually, but in the depths of your being, where real transformation occurs. Type "I am planting" in the comments if this perspective is opening new doors in your understanding of wealth creation. There's a reason this knowledge wasn't taught in schools, why it didn't make it into mainstream financial education, why you've had to search and dig and wonder if there was something more to wealth creation than what you've been told. This wasn't an accident or an oversight. Throughout history, there have been moments when this understanding was deliberately obscured, distorted, even forbidden, not because it doesn't work, but precisely because it works too well. Think about what happens when people truly understand that wealth is energy, that they're not dependent on external systems or authorities to grant them permission to prosper. They become ungovernable by fear. They stop accepting limitations imposed by others. They recognize their own power as creators of their reality. A person who understands these principles can't be controlled through economic manipulation or fear-based messaging about scarcity. They see through the illusion that resources are limited and that you must compete, compromise, or submit to access them. This kind of freedom, this kind of sovereignty over your own financial reality has always been threatening to systems built on keeping people small, dependent, and afraid. So the knowledge was hidden in plain sight, coded into spiritual texts, whispered in mystery schools, passed down through lineages of teachers who understood its power and its danger. Not danger to the individual who uses it, but danger to structures that profit from keeping people trapped in scarcity consciousness. The revelations I'm sharing with you today aren't new discoveries. They're ancient rememberings. And here's something that might give you chills when you really let it sink in. Your soul already knows this. Beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the programming you absorbed from society, from well-meaning parents, from institutions designed to create obedient workers rather than sovereign creators, there's a part of you that has always known there's a different way. You've felt it in those moments of inexplicable knowing, when something inside you whispered that the struggle shouldn't be this hard, that prosperity should feel more natural, more flowing, more aligned with who you truly are. Every time you've had that intuitive hit that you're meant for more, that there's an easier path, that connection matters more than competition, that's your soul speaking the language it's always known. This isn't fantasy or wishful thinking dressed up in spiritual language. This is what I call soul physics, the deep mechanics of how consciousness interacts with matter, how your internal state shapes external reality, how the universe responds to the energetic signature of your being. Your mind might doubt because it's been trained to doubt, programmed to dismiss anything that doesn't fit the narrow paradigm of struggle and limitation, but your soul remembers. This is why this information resonates so deeply when you hear it, why something inside you lights up and says yes, even if your logical mind tries to argue. You're not learning something foreign. You're recognizing something fundamental that got buried under layers of false beliefs about how wealth works. The journey from where you are to where you want to be financially isn't about acquiring new information from outside yourself. It's about stripping away the lies, the distortions, the fear-based programming that blocked your natural connection to abundance. If something we discussed today clicked for you, if you felt that shift in understanding, show it by hitting the like button. It's a simple gesture that helps this message reach more people who are ready for it. Every indigenous culture understood this before colonization and industrialization severed the connection between humans and natural law. Every mystical tradition preserved some version of this truth in their teachings. Every person who has ever created extraordinary wealth from seemingly nothing tapped into this principle, whether consciously or unconsciously. The impact of reconnecting with this knowledge, of allowing yourself to remember what your soul already knows, cannot be measured just in dollars and cents. It transforms your entire relationship with reality itself. You stop being a beggar, pleading with the universe for scraps. You recognize yourself as a creator, working in partnership with forces that are always responding to your energetic output. The hidden truth is that you were never meant to struggle your way to prosperity. That path was taught to you by people who didn't know any. Better by systems designed to extract your life force energy in exchange for just enough survival to keep you coming back. But that's not the only path, and it's certainly not the natural one. When you align with how energy actually moves, when you operate from connection rather than separation, from flow rather than force, wealth becomes not just possible but inevitable. It's not a matter of if, only when, and the when is determined entirely by how quickly you shed the old paradigm and embody the truth. What's powerful about this moment is that you're being given a choice. You can dismiss this as too good to be true, too simple to be real, and return to the familiar struggle. Or you can allow the part of you that recognizes this truth to guide your decisions from this point forward. Comment, "I remember" below if something in your soul is waking up to this recognition. Here's where the ancient understanding becomes practical magic that you can apply immediately. When your mind and your emotions align at the same frequency, when what you think and what you feel are broadcasting the same signal without internal conflict or contradiction, something extraordinary happens. Matter begins to reorganize itself around you. Circumstances shift, opportunities materialize, resources appear. This isn't mysticism, though it might sound like it. This is the physics of consciousness applied to the tangible world. Your thoughts alone are weak. Your emotions alone are scattered. But when they lock into coherence, when your mental clarity matches your emotional conviction, you become a force that physical reality must respond to. The ancient sages understood something that modern society has completely inverted. They didn't wake up each morning wondering how they would earn money, strategizing about how to capture wealth, or stressing about making ends meet. Their entire approach was the opposite. They cultivated an internal state so magnetic, so aligned with abundance, that money sought them out. Wealth moved toward them naturally, inevitably drawn by the coherent signal they were broadcasting. They became attractors rather than chasers, and this single shift in orientation made all the difference between struggle and flow. This is the transformation that's available to you right now, but it requires confronting something uncomfortable that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You cannot attract what you don't believe you deserve. Read that again. Because it's the hidden barrier that stops more people from prosperity than any external circumstance ever could. You might consciously want more money. You might work hard, set goals, follow all the right advice. But if somewhere deep in your subconscious, there's a belief that you're not worthy of wealth, that good things happen to other people, but not to you, that you're somehow fundamentally flawed or lacking, then no amount of external action will create lasting abundance. This is the first and most insidious trap your ego constructs. It convinces you that abundance is for other people, the lucky ones, the special ones, the ones who have something you don't. It tells you that wealth requires struggle, sacrifice, suffering. It programs you to believe that wanting more is selfish, that prosperity is somehow spiritually suspect, that you should be content with less. And all of these beliefs, operating beneath your conscious awareness, create an energetic field that repels the very thing you consciously desire. The doubt vibrating in your subconscious mind is louder than the affirmations you speak with your conscious mind, and the universe always responds to the stronger signal. Your identity, who you believe yourself to be at the deepest level, precedes and determines your financial reality. If you identify as someone who struggles with money, someone for whom wealth is always just out of reach, someone who has to work harder than others just to stay afloat, then that identity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your decisions, your actions, your perceptions all filter through that identity and create evidence to support it. You literally cannot see opportunities that don't match your identity. Your brain filters them out as irrelevant before they even reach your conscious awareness. But here's the revelation that changes everything. Identity isn't fixed. It's not determined by your past, your circumstances, or your bank balance. Identity is a choice, a decision about who you're going to be from this moment forward. When you consciously choose to identify as someone who is worthy of abundance, someone for whom wealth flows naturally, someone who is inherently deserving simply because you exist, you initiate a cascade of changes that ripple through every aspect of your financial reality. Your decisions change, your actions change, your energy changes. And as your energy changes, the circumstances and opportunities available to you transform to match. The ancient masters spent more time cultivating their internal identity than they did on external strategies, because they understood that identity is the foundation. Get that right, and everything else falls into place. Get that wrong, and no amount of hard work or clever tactics will produce lasting results. This is why you see people win the lottery and lose it all within a few years. Their external circumstances changed, but their identity didn't. They didn't believe at a core level that they deserved that level of wealth, so their subconscious mind found ways to return them to the financial level that matched their identity. The journey to doubling your money, to multiplying your wealth, to creating the financial freedom you desire, begins not with a new investment strategy or a side hustle or a better job. It begins with the decision to transform your identity, to release the limiting beliefs that have kept you small, to claim your inherent worthiness of abundance. Write, "I am worthy" in the comments if you're ready to make this identity shift your reality. Inside the initiation temples of ancient Babylon and Egypt, where the secrets of wealth creation were passed from master to student in carefully guarded ceremonies, there was a phrase repeated so often it became almost a mantra. Wealth is not reached, it is remembered. At first glance, this might seem like poetic language, a beautiful metaphor without practical meaning. But the sages who spoke these words understood something profound about the nature of abundance that modern thinking has completely lost. You are not trying to become something you're not. You're not attempting to acquire some external quality or characteristic that you lack. You already are abundance. You've simply forgotten. This isn't semantic wordplay or feel-good spirituality designed to make you feel better about your current circumstances. This is a fundamental truth about your original nature, before conditioning, before programming, before the world taught you to be afraid. You came into this life as a being of pure potential, energetically connected to infinite abundance, naturally magnetic to everything you needed. Then something happened. Society, well-meaning parents, educational systems, religious institutions, media, all began teaching you a different story. They taught you that money is scarce, that you have to fight for your share, that wealth is something other people have while you must struggle. They taught you to fear money, to view it with suspicion, to believe that wanting it makes you greedy or shallow or spiritually compromised. Layer by layer, these beliefs covered over your original knowing. They created a barrier between you and the abundance that is your birthright. And now, the journey back to wealth isn't about acquiring something new. It's about stripping away what's false, dissolving the limiting beliefs that were never yours to begin with, and remembering what you knew before. The world convinced you otherwise. This remembering is the transformation that actually changes your financial reality, not from the outside in, but from the inside out, which is the only change that lasts. Think back to when you were a child, before the weight of bills and responsibilities and adult worries settled onto your shoulders. Do you remember how you dreamed? Without limits, without that voice in your head calculating odds or listing all the reasons something wouldn't work. You wanted something, and in your mind, it was already possible. You didn't wake up anxious about how it would happen, analyzing every potential obstacle, creating contingency plans for failure. You simply knew with a certainty that didn't require justification or proof that what you desired could be yours. That state of consciousness, that childlike faith combined with imaginative power, was your original mind. Clean, uncluttered, magnetic, creative. Money, like all forms of energy in the universe, responded to that purity of intention. Children who believe they'll be taken care of are taken care of. Young people who dream big without hesitation often achieve things that more cautious, more realistic adults dismiss as impossible. Not because children have some magical advantage, but because they haven't yet closed the channels through which abundance flows. Fear hasn't yet built its dams. Doubt hasn't yet created its barriers. Worry hasn't yet constructed its walls. The energy moves through them unobstructed, and reality responds accordingly. Then gradually, we learn to be afraid. We learn that resources are limited, that we must compete, that safety lies in playing small and not wanting too much. We learn to distrust our desires, to second-guess our intuition, to dismiss our dreams as childish fantasies that must be abandoned in favor of adult pragmatism. And with each lesson in fear, each moment of buying into scarcity consciousness, the channels close a little more. The seed flow slows. The natural magnetism that drew abundance to us effortlessly begins to weaken. Not because we've lost some essential quality, but because we've covered it over with layers of false beliefs. The impact of this realization is staggering. You don't need to become someone different to create wealth. You need to return to who you were before fear took hold, before scarcity thinking became your default operating system. You need to remember the state of consciousness you inhabited, naturally as a child, then combine it with the wisdom, capability, and focused intention you've developed as an adult. That combination, that integration of childlike faith with adult action, is unstoppable. It's the formula the ancient masters used, and it's the hidden truth behind every story of seemingly miraculous financial transformation you've ever heard. The question isn't whether you have the capacity for abundance. You do inherently as part of your essential nature. The question is whether you're willing to do the inner work of remembering, of clearing away the accumulated fears and false beliefs that block your natural flow. Drop "remembering now" in the comments if this is awakening something that's been dormant inside you. The ancient Phoenician merchants, those master traders who built commercial empires spanning the entire Mediterranean world, had a practice that modern business schools would likely dismiss as superstitious nonsense. Yet these same merchants accumulated wealth that would rival today's billionaires, and their trading networks dominated the ancient world for centuries. What was their secret? Before every transaction, whether buying or selling, whether dealing with a trusted partner or a complete stranger, they would pause for a brief moment and silently bless the exchange. Not a religious ritual in the conventional sense, but an intentional act of gratitude and goodwill directed toward whoever stood on the other side of the transaction. They weren't focused solely on immediate profit or calculating how much they could extract from each deal. They understood something far more sophisticated about how wealth actually multiplies. They knew that each transaction wasn't an isolated event, but part of an ongoing flow, and that the energy they brought to each exchange would determine what came back to them in future dealings. By blessing the person they traded with, by genuinely appreciating the exchange, by mentally thanking them for participating in this flow of commerce, they were doing something powerful beneath the surface. They were programming their consciousness to see abundance everywhere, training their minds to recognize opportunity rather than threat, calibrating their energy to attract more of what they were grateful for. This silent ceremony, repeated thousands of times throughout their lives, transformed them into what we might call prosperity magnets. Not through manipulation or clever tactics, but through the cumulative impact of consistently maintaining a consciousness of appreciation and expansion. Every blessed transaction reinforced their identity as abundant beings, as worthy recipients of wealth, as participants in a generous universe. And that identity, strengthened over time, created a gravitational pull that drew increasingly better opportunities, more favorable deals, and greater wealth into their lives. The blessing wasn't magic words creating supernatural effects. It was a technology for maintaining the correct energetic frequency that naturally attracts abundance. Now, let me share with you a way of understanding money that will completely transform how you relate to it from this moment forward. A shift in what stands before it. When you approach this mirror carrying fear, suspicion, or distrust, the reflection distorts. You see lack, you see danger, you see something that must be gripped tightly, or it will escape. And because money is reflecting your internal state back to you, that's exactly what you experience in physical reality. The fearful relationship creates fearful outcomes. The distrustful approach creates circumstances that justify more distrust. But watch what happens when you approach this same liquid mirror carrying love, appreciation, and confident expectation. The reflection transforms. It shows you brilliance, possibility, abundance. It reflects back the light you're carrying within yourself. And because money at its essence is simply energy taking physical form, it responds to this shift by flowing more freely toward you, by multiplying more readily, by staying in your life with greater stability. Money is a soul mirror, one of the clearest and most immediate feedback systems the universe provides about your internal state. Your bank balance, your income level, the way money moves through your life, all of it, is reflecting something happening inside you, some vibration you're broadcasting, some belief you're holding as true. This is why two people can apply the exact same financial strategies and get completely different results. One sees their investments grow, while the other watches theirs stagnate or shrink. One attracts unexpected income, while the other encounters unexpected expenses. Same actions, different consciousness, different results. The strategies aren't irrelevant, but they're secondary. The primary determinant of your financial reality is always the internal state you bring to your relationship with money. Change that state, and the external circumstances must reorganize themselves to match, because the mirror can only reflect what stands before it. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change the reflection without ever turning their attention to what's creating it. They want more money, but continue vibrating at the frequency of lack. They desire abundance, but maintain an identity rooted in scarcity. They take action from a place of fear and wonder why the results don't match their intentions. It's like standing in front of a mirror, frowning and demanding that the reflections smile. The reflection cannot change until you change. The external cannot shift until the internal transforms. Understanding money as a mirror, rather than as an opponent to be conquered or a resource to be captured, changes everything about how you approach wealth creation. You stop fighting and start aligning. You stop forcing and start allowing. You stop grasping and start flowing. And in that shift, in that fundamental transformation of your relationship with money itself, the doubling begins. Not as a one-time event, but as a natural, ongoing process that accelerates as your consciousness stabilizes at higher frequencies. Put clear reflection below if you're seeing how your inner state has been creating your outer financial reality all along. The medieval alchemists, those mysterious figures hunched over bubbling vials in candlelit laboratories, were searching for something the outside world misunderstood. History books tell us they were trying to turn lead into gold, and on the surface that's true. But the wise alchemists, the true masters of the craft, understood that the real transformation wasn't happening in the vessels and compounds on their tables. The external experiments were symbolic representations of an internal process they called the creation of internal gold. They knew that all external change, every transformation in the physical world, begins with a shift in internal identity. Change who you are on the inside, and the outside must eventually conform to match. This principle plays out in your financial life with perfect precision, though most people never make the connection. You can have millions of dollars in your bank account and still feel poor if your internal identity remains rooted in scarcity consciousness. There are countless stories of lottery winners, inheritance receivers, and sudden wealth acquirers who end up broke within a few years, sometimes worse off than before the money arrived. The external circumstances changed dramatically, but the internal identity remained the same. They still felt limited, still operated from fear, still saw themselves as fundamentally lacking. And because the universe always brings external reality into alignment with internal identity, the money disappeared until the outer circumstances matched the inner state once again. But here's the transformation that changes everything. The revelation that puts you in complete control of your financial destiny. If you recognize the wealth you already are, not as future potential, but as present reality, not as something you're trying to become, but as something you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning, the universe begins reflecting that recognition back to you. This isn't positive thinking or affirmations spoken without belief. This is a fundamental shift in how you identify yourself at the deepest levels of consciousness. When you know yourself as abundance, when that knowing settles into your bones and becomes the unquestioned foundation of your self-concept, money has no choice but to flow toward you and multiply in your hands. The journey from scarcity to abundance isn't measured in dollars earned or investments made. It's measured in the evolution of your internal identity, in the degree to which you've shed false beliefs and remembered your true nature. Create the internal gold, Transform your consciousness into the frequency of wealth, and the external gold follows as naturally as a shadow follows an object in sunlight. This is the hidden truth behind every rags to riches story, every seemingly miraculous financial turnaround. The external circumstances were always secondary. The primary transformation happened internally, in the invisible realm of consciousness and identity, where all real change originates. Now here's where things get fascinating, where the practical application of these principles becomes almost magical in its precision. When you feel complete, when you've done the internal work of recognizing yourself as already abundant, when you no longer operate from a vibration of lack or need, something extraordinary begins happening in your external world. Opportunities start appearing, not randomly but with perfect timing. The right person calls you at exactly the right moment. An idea strikes you that solves a problem you've been wrestling with. A connection you made years ago suddenly becomes relevant in ways you couldn't have predicted. Resources materialize from unexpected directions. Most people call this luck or coincidence, dismissing these occurrences as random chance. But what's actually happening is synchronicity, the universe's direct response to the frequency you're broadcasting. Think of yourself as a radio transmitter. When your signal is clear, consistent, and aligned with abundance, you begin receiving on channels that were always there, but were previously inaccessible. People who can help you are drawn into your orbit. Ideas that match your expanded consciousness download into your awareness. Circumstances arrange themselves in your favor, not because you're special or chosen, but because you've aligned yourself with the natural flow of abundance that's always moving through reality, seeking channels through which it can express. This is the impact of internal transformation manifesting as external synchronicity. Your vibration literally reorganizes the field of possibilities around you, making certain opportunities visible and accessible that were invisible when you were operating at a different frequency. It's not that the opportunities weren't there before, it's that you weren't tuned to the channel where they broadcast. Change your frequency, change what you can perceive and attract. This isn't metaphor or poetic language. This is practical mechanics of how consciousness interacts with the material world. The decisions you make from a state of completeness and abundance consciousness are fundamentally different from decisions made from lack and fear. They lead to different actions, different connections, different outcomes. And as these outcomes accumulate, as the synchronicities multiply, your external reality begins reflecting your internal transformation with increasing speed and intensity. Right synchronicity activated if you're starting to notice how alignment creates seemingly miraculous timing in your life. Before we can even begin discussing the practical mechanics of doubling your money, there's a fundamental shift that must happen first. Your identity must double before your money can. This isn't a sequential process where you work on yourself and then later work on your finances as two separate projects. This is recognizing that they're the same project, that your financial reality is an exact printout of your identity, and that attempting to change one without transforming the other is like rearranging deck chairs while the ship continues on the same course. The doubling begins when you shift from seeing yourself as a victim of financial circumstances to recognizing yourself as the origin of flow, the source from which abundance emanates. Most people live their entire lives believing that money is external, something out there in the world that they must find, earn, capture, and protect. This belief creates a fundamental misunderstanding of how wealth actually works and guarantees a life of financial struggle no matter how hard you work or how smart your strategies might be. Money isn't external. It never has been. Money is responding constantly and precisely to what you emit energetically. Your bank balance is a measurement of your vibration. Your income level reflects your identity. Your financial circumstances mirror your consciousness. Change the signal you're broadcasting, and the money must change to match, not eventually, but immediately in the invisible realm, with physical manifestation following as quickly as your beliefs allow. This is why two people can start with identical resources, follow the same advice, take the same actions, and end up with completely different results. One person's identity says, "I am worthy of wealth. I am a natural receiver of abundance. Money flows to me easily." The other person's identity, beneath their conscious desires and spoken goals, whispers, "I'm not really deserving. Good things don't happen to me. I always struggle with money." Same actions, different identities, different outcomes. The actions matter, but they're amplifying whatever identity lies beneath them. Powerful identity with aligned action creates exponential results. Weak identity with the same actions creates minimal or no results. The transformation that actually multiplies your money isn't found in financial education, though knowledge can be useful. It's found in identity reconstruction, in the deliberate process of shedding who you've been taught to be and claiming who you actually are beneath the conditioning. This is what the ancient wisdom traditions understood and what modern financial advice completely misses. You are not a separate being trying to attract money from an external universe. You are consciousness expressing itself, and money is one of the forms your consciousness takes in physical reality. Shift the consciousness, and the form must shift to match. Deep in the temples of ancient Egypt, in Karnak, where priests underwent years of initiation into the mysteries of existence, there was a papyrus scroll guarded with the same reverence most cultures reserve for their holiest texts. On this papyrus, written in gold ink that caught and reflected the torchlight, was a single phrase that contained the secret to mastery over the material world. Whoever understands the reflection dominates matter. For centuries, scholars and seekers tried to decode this phrase, looking for hidden meanings or secret techniques embedded in the words. But the meaning was never hidden. It was simply so profound, so contrary to how most people understand reality, that it remained invisible despite being stated plainly. The reflection being referenced isn't what you see in a physical mirror. It's the reflection of consciousness into material form. Everything in the physical world, every circumstance, every condition, every object, including money, is consciousness reflected into matter. The material world doesn't create your experience. Your consciousness creates the material world you experience. Matter, including money, can only reflect what the mind holds as truth. Not what you wish were true, not what you say you believe, but what you actually hold as unquestioned truth in the deepest layers of your being where identity lives. This is the hidden mechanism behind all manifestation, all creation, all transformation of circumstances. The priests who understood this principle could indeed dominate matter, not through supernatural powers, but through the natural operation of consciousness when it's aligned with truth. They knew that trying to change external circumstances without changing internal truth was futile, like arguing with your reflection in a mirror. But change what stands before the mirror, and the reflection has no choice but to change instantly to match. The impact of this understanding on your financial life cannot be overstated. Every dollar you don't have is reflecting a truth you hold about scarcity. Every opportunity you miss is reflecting a truth you hold about your unworthiness or the difficulty of success. Every financial breakthrough you experience is reflecting a moment when your consciousness aligned with abundance at a level deep enough to override the contradictory beliefs. Comment, truth reflected, if you're beginning to grasp how your inner truth has been creating your outer money reality. Think about the sun for a moment. It doesn't wake up each morning and decide whether to shine today. It doesn't calculate whether it has enough energy. doesn't worry about whether it deserves to radiate light, doesn't concern itself with who might benefit from its warmth. The sun simply is. Its nature is to shine, and in being fully itself without resistance or doubt, it feeds everything it touches. Plants grow, ecosystems thrive, life itself becomes possible, all as a natural byproduct of the sun, doing nothing more than being what it is without apology or hesitation. This is the model for how your relationship with abundance should function. Your vibration, your energetic signature, should operate like the sun. Constant, radiant, effortless. Not something you force or manufacture, but something that emanates naturally from your being when you're not blocking it with fear, doubt, or the need to control outcomes. When you shine this way, when you allow your natural abundance consciousness to radiate without interference, money finds you with the same inevitability that plants turn towards sunlight. Abundance isn't something you chase. It's something that locates you, drawn by the signal you're broadcasting, following your light like a faithful shadow that appears automatically whenever you step into illumination. But here's where most people's journey toward wealth gets sabotaged before. It can even begin, and it happens so subtly, so deeply beneath conscious awareness, that they never identify the real enemy. Guilt. Not the guilt of having done something wrong, but a more insidious kind of guilt that's been programmed into your psyche from early childhood. Guilt about having when others don't. Guilt about wanting more when you already have enough to survive. Guilt about being different, about standing out, about claiming the abundance that's your birthright. This guilt operates like a wet blanket thrown over a fire, systematically extinguishing your shine before it can attract the wealth you desire. How many times throughout your life were you told, directly or indirectly, that money corrupts? That rich people are selfish, greedy, or morally compromised? That seeking abundance is a sign of shallow values or spiritual immaturity? That good people shouldn't care about wealth? That wanting financial freedom is somehow incompatible with being a decent human being? These messages, repeated thousands of times through various channels, parents, teachers, religious leaders, media, friends, created an emotional programming that runs deep in your subconscious mind. And every time you start moving toward greater wealth, this programming activates like an immune system rejecting a foreign substance, creating internal resistance that sabotages your external actions. The hidden truth is that this guilt serves no positive purpose in your life. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't help anyone else. It simply distances you from the natural flow of abundance, creating an artificial barrier between you and the prosperity that would otherwise move through you and outward to benefit others. Because here's what the guilt programming never tells you. Abundant people have more capacity to help, to give, to make a positive impact. Scarcity doesn't serve the world. Your financial struggle doesn't lift anyone else up. Your limitation doesn't create equality. It just ensures there's one less person with resources to contribute to solutions. The transformation happens when you recognize this guilt for what it is, not your authentic feeling, but an implanted belief system designed to keep you small, manageable, and dependent. When you make the decision to release it, to give yourself full permission to prosper without apology, something powerful shifts in your energetic field. The brake that's been engaged your entire life releases. The resistance dissolves, and suddenly the natural flow that was always trying to reach you can finally get through. This isn't about becoming greedy or selfish. It's about removing the false barrier that's been preventing you from being the abundant, generous, impactful person you came here to be. Every wealthy person who uses their resources to create positive change, to employ people, to support causes, to solve problems, had to first overcome this guilt programming. They had to give themselves permission to have more, to be different, to stand in their power without diminishing themselves, to make others comfortable. And in doing so, they became capable of contributing at levels that would have been impossible from a place of scarcity. Your guilt serves no one. Your abundance, properly channeled, serves everyone, including yourself. The journey from where you are to doubled money, to multiplied wealth, to financial freedom requires this internal purge of guilt. You must become comfortable shining brightly, receiving abundantly, having more than enough. Not from ego or superiority, but from the simple recognition that you're meant to be a channel for prosperity. And channels only work when they're open and flowing freely without restriction. Type "guilt released" below if you're ready to let go of the programming that's been blocking your abundance. Here's something that will completely reframe how you think about wealth creation. The universe doesn't operate on the principle of conservation when it comes to consciousness and abundance. It operates on the principle of expansion. Look at nature for a moment. A single apple tree doesn't produce just enough apples to replace itself. It produces hundreds of apples, each containing multiple seeds, each seed capable of growing another tree that will produce hundreds more apples. Nature doesn't do scarcity. Nature does exponential abundance. And you, as an expression of this same creative force, are designed to operate the same way. When you grow, when you multiply your resources, when you develop your ideas and share your gifts more broadly, you're not being greedy or excessive. You're fulfilling the fundamental law of the universe itself. The universe actually rejoices when you expand, because expansion is its nature, and you operating in alignment with that nature creates resonance, harmony, flow. Every time you make yourself smaller to fit others' expectations, every time you dim your light to avoid outshining someone else, every time you limit your financial growth out of some misplaced sense of humility, you're working against the very fabric of creation. And that resistance creates friction, struggle, and limitation in your experience. The true meaning of doubling your money isn't just seeing your bank balance increase by a factor of 2, though that's certainly part of it. True doubling means expanding your capacity to receive, to hold, to circulate, and to multiply abundance. It means becoming a bigger channel for prosperity to flow through, not for your benefit alone, but for the benefit of everyone whose life you touch. When you double your money while maintaining scarcity consciousness, you'll lose it. When you double your consciousness and expand your identity, the money must follow, because you've become a vibrational match for greater wealth. This is the transformation that lasts, the shift that creates permanent elevation rather than temporary spikes. Now let's talk about something that trips up almost everyone who's trying to build wealth, and it's so counterintuitive that even people who intellectually understand it struggle to embody it. Money, like all energy in the universe, has a fundamental characteristic. It seeks to move. It wants to flow, to circulate, to travel from hand to hand and place to place, creating value and generating more of itself through movement. You are meant to be a channel for this movement, a conduit through which money flows, not a dam that tries to trap and hold it in one place. When you cling to money through fear, when you grip it tightly because you're terrified of not having enough, when you make financial decisions primarily from the desire to protect what you have rather than expand what's possible, something destructive happens. The money stagnates. And stagnant energy, whether it's water, air, or money, begins to die. It loses its vitality, its capacity to grow, its natural tendency to multiply. You might look at your bank balance and think you're successfully holding on to your money, but energetically you're choking the life out of it, ensuring that it can't reproduce, can't attract more of itself, can't fulfill its purpose of circulating and creating value. The ancient sages, those who accumulated and maintained extraordinary wealth across lifetimes, had a saying that captures this principle perfectly. Money doesn't love cages. If you free it with gratitude, it returns with more force. Think about what this means in practical terms. Every time money flows through your hands, whether you're paying a bill, making an investment, buying something you need, or giving to a cause you believe in, you have a choice about the energy you attach to that transaction. You can release the money with fear, with resentment, with a sense of loss, essentially putting it in an energetic cage even as it leaves your possession. Or you can release it with gratitude, with trust that it's going out to do good work and will return multiplied, freeing it to fulfill its nature of movement and growth. When you free money with the right consciousness, when you allow it to move through you rather than trying to trap it within you, something remarkable happens behind the scenes in the realm of energy and vibration. You send a signal to the universe that says, I trust the flow. I know abundance is infinite. I'm a worthy channel for ever-increasing prosperity. And the universe, always responding to the signals you broadcast, begins directing more money toward you, not as a reward for being spiritual or good, but as a natural consequence of you becoming an effective channel that allows energy to flow rather than a blockage that resists flow. The impact of this single shift in how you relate to money cannot be overstated. People who hoard from fear stay stuck at the same financial level or slowly decline. People who circulate with trust experience exponential growth. Same actions on the surface, completely different energetic signatures beneath, completely different results in manifestation. Right channel open if you're ready to become a conduit for flowing abundance rather than a cage for stagnant money. There's a subtle distinction that most people completely miss when they hear about the power of giving, and this missed distinction is the difference between those who experience the multiplying effect and those who give generously, yet somehow remain stuck in the same financial circumstances. The distinction isn't in the act of giving itself, it's in the vibrational frequency, the energetic signature that accompanies the giving. The vibration with which you give is precisely the vibration with which the universe returns resources to you. Not similar, not approximately the same, but exactly identical. If you give from a place of lack, from a consciousness of not having enough, but feeling obligated to share anyway, secretly hoping that your sacrifice will somehow be noticed and rewarded, you're not actually giving at all. You're negotiating, you're making a transaction with the universe, offering something you can barely afford to lose in exchange for some future compensation that you're desperately hoping will arrive. This kind of giving, though it might look generous on the surface, carries a vibration of scarcity, anxiety, and expectation. And that's precisely what the universe reflects back to you. More circumstances that make you feel scarce, anxious, and expectant of compensation that never quite satisfies. The return comes because the law always operates, but it comes wrapped in the same energy you sent out. The hidden truth is that giving from lack doesn't activate abundance. It reinforces scarcity, both in your consciousness and in your external circumstances. But watch what happens when you shift the energy beneath the action. When you give from confidence, from a genuine knowing that flow is constant and return is inevitable. When you release resources with gratitude and trust rather than fear and hope, you activate something the ancients called the law of double return. This isn't metaphorical or symbolic. When your giving carries the frequency of abundance consciousness, when it's rooted in certainty rather than expectation, the universe responds by doubling what you released and sending it back through channels you couldn't have predicted or planned for. Not because you're being rewarded for good behavior, but because you've demonstrated through your action and the energy behind it that you're operating as an open channel rather than a closed system. You've proven through your vibration that you understand abundance is infinite and that giving doesn't diminish you, but actually expands your capacity to receive. Now let me tell you about a practice that demonstrates this principle in action. something that ancient traders discovered and used to build extraordinary wealth across generations. High in the mountains of Tibet, where thin air and harsh conditions made every resource precious, merchants developed a practice that outsiders considered superstitious, but which operated on profound understanding of how energy works. Before every exchange, whether buying or selling, whether dealing with silk from China or salt from India, these merchants would pause and silently bless the coins they were about to trade. Not a quick gesture or empty ritual, but a genuine moment of connection with the energy they were releasing into circulation. Each transaction became a spiritual act, an opportunity to infuse money with gratitude, goodwill, and conscious intention before sending it on its journey. They understood something that modern commerce has completely forgotten. Money carries memory. It holds the energetic imprint of how it's been treated, how it's been given and received, what consciousness has touched it. By blessing their coins before releasing them, these merchants were programming the money with a high-frequency vibration, ensuring that what went out into the world would return carrying the same blessing, multiplied through all the hands it passed through along the way. And it worked. Not occasionally or randomly, but consistently and predictably. These merchant families maintained their prosperity through centuries, through political upheaval, through changing trade routes and shifting economies. Their wealth wasn't dependent on external circumstances because they had mastered the internal technology of conscious exchange. They knew that the energy invested in each transaction would return multiplied, and their experience proved them right generation after generation. Here's what's fascinating. You've probably experienced this principle in your own life without recognizing the pattern. Think back to times when you helped someone without any expectation of return, when you gave freely just because it felt right, when you invested in something or someone purely from a place of expansion rather than calculation. And then, days or weeks later, an opportunity appeared out of nowhere. A connection bore unexpected fruit. Resources showed up from a direction you weren't even looking. Most people dismiss these as coincidences, as lucky timing, as random occurrences with no connection to their earlier actions. But there are no coincidences in a universe governed by energetic law. What you experienced was the return wave from your earlier transmission, the doubling effect of giving from the right frequency, the mathematical precision of consciousness operating according to principle. The transformation available to you right now is recognizing this pattern, understanding the mechanics behind it, and then consciously applying it to every financial transaction, every exchange of value, every moment when money moves through your hands. Drop "blessed exchange" in the comments if you're committing to bringing conscious energy to every financial interaction from this moment forward. Here's where we need to address something uncomfortable but absolutely critical to your financial transformation. The universe isn't a customer service desk responding to your requests and complaints. It doesn't care what you ask for, what you pray for, what you visualize or affirm or write in your journal. Those things can be useful tools for shifting your internal state, but they're not what determines what shows up in your life. What the universe responds to, with absolute consistency and mathematical precision, is what you believe you deserve at the deepest level of your being. Not what you consciously think you deserve, not what you hope you deserve, but what your subconscious mind, your core identity, your unquestioned sense of self believes about your worthiness to receive. If you believe, truly believe in the foundation of your consciousness, that money is scarce, that there's never enough to go around, that having abundance means someone else must do without, then you will continue living in circumstances that validate that belief. The universe isn't punishing you, it's simply reflecting back what you're broadcasting. Your experience of scarcity isn't evidence that money is actually scarce. It's evidence that you believe it is, and your belief is creating a filter through which you perceive reality, making opportunities invisible, causing you to make decisions that reinforce limitation, programming you to accept less as normal. But here's where it gets even more insidious. Even if you manage to break through the belief in absolute scarcity, there's often another ceiling waiting just above it. The belief that having more than a certain amount is excessive, wrong, or dangerous. You might consciously want financial freedom, but if your subconscious holds a belief that being wealthy would make you greedy, would separate you from people you love, would create problems you don't want to deal with, or would somehow corrupt your character, then you'll never pass that certain point. You'll get close, then something will happen to bring you back down. An unexpected expense, a failed investment, a decision that in retrospect makes no sense, but at the time felt necessary. This isn't bad luck. This is your belief system operating as a thermostat, keeping your financial temperature within the range you've unconsciously decided is acceptable for someone like you. The journey to doubling your money, to breaking through to new levels of abundance, requires identifying and dismantling these deserving limits. You must become aware of the ceiling you've placed above yourself and make a conscious decision to remove it, not through force or willpower, but through recognition that the ceiling was never real to begin with. It was just a belief, and beliefs can be changed the moment you decide they no longer serve you. Now let me give you an image that will transform how you approach wealth creation from this moment forward. Think about a magnet sitting on a table. Does it chase after metal? Does it run around desperately trying to find iron filings to attach to? Does it worry and stress and pray anxiously that metal will come within its range? Of course not. A magnet simply exists in its natural state, and its nature is to attract whatever shares its magnetic frequency. The attraction happens automatically, effortlessly, inevitably, as a byproduct of what the magnet is, not what it does. You are designed to work exactly the same way with money. The struggle, the chasing, the anxious striving that most people engage in their entire lives isn't just ineffective, it's actually counterproductive. It broadcasts a frequency of desperation and lack that repels the very thing you're trying to attract. The transformation happens when you stop trying to capture money and start building your internal frequency, your energetic signature, until money is drawn to you through natural magnetic attraction. This isn't passive wishful thinking. This is becoming so aligned with abundance consciousness, so clear in your identity as a prosperous being, so consistent in your vibration that money has no choice but to move in your direction. The hidden truth is that every person who has created extraordinary wealth without inheriting it, without winning lotteries, without lucky breaks, has done so by becoming magnetic. They might not use that language. They might not even be consciously aware of the energetic mechanics at play. But if you examine their consciousness, their beliefs, their sense of deserving, their identity, you'll find they operate at a frequency that naturally attracts resources, opportunities, and money. They don't chase. They don't beg. They don't compromise their values or sacrifice their peace for paychecks. They simply exist at a frequency where abundance flows toward them, and they've learned to maintain that frequency regardless of external circumstances. Building this magnetic quality isn't about techniques or tricks. It's about the consistent cultivation of consciousness that knows itself as abundant, that expects good things, that feels worthy without needing external validation, that trusts in flow even when current circumstances might suggest otherwise. Type magnetic frequency below if you're ready to stop chasing and start attracting through the power of your upgraded consciousness. Before you can double what you have, before the multiplication can begin. There's a prerequisite that most people skip right over in their eagerness to get to the manifestation part. You must first genuinely acknowledge and appreciate what's already flowing in your life right now. This isn't some positive thinking exercise designed to make you feel better about having less than you want. Gratitude is an actual technology, a magnetic key that unlocks doors in the energetic realm that no amount of striving or forcing can open. When you sincerely thank what you have, not as a manipulation tactic to get more, but as an authentic recognition of the abundance already present, something shifts in your vibrational frequency. The energy that was previously scattered, dispersed across various frequencies of wanting and lacking and hoping, begins converging. It focuses, it intensifies, it creates a coherent signal that the universe can match and amplify. Think about it like this. If you're constantly broadcasting, "I don't have enough, I need more," why isn't it? Here yet, you're sending scattered, contradictory signals into the field. The universe receives static, confusion, mixed messages. But when you shift into genuine gratitude for what is, you create a clear, strong, focused transmission that says, "I recognize abundance, I see it operating in my life, I'm aligned with receiving more." That clarity creates magnetic pull. This is why people who practice genuine gratitude, not as a spiritual bypass, but as a real shift in perception, often experience what looks like miraculous timing and unexpected windfalls. They haven't changed their circumstances through gratitude. They've changed their frequency, and their circumstances are reorganizing to match the new signal. The money that was always trying to reach them can finally get through because the channel is no longer blocked by the static of complaint and focus on lack. This is practical energetics, not wishful thinking. The gratitude isn't creating abundance where none existed. It's removing the interference that was preventing you from perceiving and receiving the abundance that's always flowing. Now, here's where many people who understand energy and vibration get stuck. And it's a critical point that determines whether these principles actually transform your bank balance or remain interesting theories. Money is energy, yes. Consciousness creates reality, absolutely. Your vibration determines your experience, completely true. But energy needs a physical channel to manifest in the material world. You cannot just sit in meditation, vibrating at the frequency of wealth, and expect money to materialize in your bank account while you take no action in the physical realm. The universe operates through laws that require your participation, your collaboration, your willingness to be the conduit through which the invisible becomes visible. Action is that channel. Not desperate action driven by fear and lack. Not scattered activity that keeps you busy, but moves you nowhere. Conscious, aligned, inspired action that flows naturally from your elevated state, rather than compensating for an internal sense of insufficiency. When your vibration is right, the correct actions become obvious. Opportunities present themselves. Ideas drop into your awareness with perfect timing. People cross your path who have exactly what you need or need exactly what you have. And then you must act. You must reach out, follow through, take the meeting, make the investment, start the project, have the conversation. The energy you've been cultivating needs your hands, your voice, your decisions, your movement through space and time to complete its manifestation into physical form. The universe doesn't force things. It can't override your free will or make you do something you're resisting. It needs your conscious collaboration, your willing participation in the dance between inner state and outer expression. This is why two people can have the same internal work done, the same elevated consciousness, the same clear vision, but one experiences rapid manifestation while the other stays stuck. The difference is in the willingness to act when the moment arrives, to say yes when opportunity knocks, to step into the unknown when intuition guides, to release the need for guaranteed outcomes and trust the process enough to engage physically with what's unfolding. The hidden truth behind all wealth creation. Behind every rags to riches story, behind every financial breakthrough, is this marriage of consciousness and action. Consciousness without action is dreaming. Action without consciousness is struggling. But when they come together, when your internal frequency aligns with clear, purposeful, inspired movement in the world, you become unstoppable. You create pathways for money to reach you that didn't exist before. You generate opportunities through your presence and decisions that wouldn't have appeared if you'd stayed internal and passive. This isn't about working harder or doing more. It's about acting smarter, moving from alignment, making decisions from clarity rather than desperation. When you combine elevated vibration with strategic action, when you marry your inner knowing with outer expression, the doubling doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. Comment aligned action if you're ready to match your elevated consciousness with purposeful movement in the physical world. The ancient Babylonian merchants weren't just traders conducting transactions. They were practitioners of a sophisticated system that integrated consciousness, emotion, and physical action into a unified approach to wealth creation. Every single coin they invested carried intention. Every exchange was treated as a ceremony of consciousness, not just commerce. Every movement they made in the marketplace was deliberate, purposeful, aligned with an internal state they had carefully cultivated through years of practice and discipline. This wasn't accidental or intuitive. This was systematic application of principles they understood completely, principles that had been passed down through generations of successful merchants who had proven these laws through lived experience. What made them different from the merchants around them who struggled and failed wasn't better products or superior negotiation skills or even more starting capital. It was the integration of mind, vibration, and emotion into every aspect of their business dealings. They would clear their consciousness before entering into agreements. They would align their emotional state before releasing resources. They would visualize successful outcomes while maintaining detachment from specific results. And because they combined elevated consciousness with strategic action, because they married internal mastery with external competence, their results consistently exceeded expectations, not occasionally, not randomly, consistently, predictably, year after year, generation after generation. The hidden mechanism behind their success, the secret ingredient that transformed ordinary commercial activity into wealth multiplication, was their understanding of something most modern business people completely miss. They knew that the transaction itself was secondary. The primary event was always the energetic exchange happening beneath the surface, in the realm of consciousness and emotion where all manifestation originates. They controlled that realm with precision, and the physical outcomes simply followed the energetic template they had established. Now let's dive into the most powerful and most misunderstood aspect of this entire system, because this is where the doubling actually happens, where the multiplication gets triggered, where the return wave gets programmed with its magnitude. The emotion that accompanies your giving, your investing, your releasing of resources into circulation doesn't just color the experience. It determines, with mathematical precision, the magnitude of what returns to you. This isn't poetic metaphor. This is energetic law operating as reliably as gravity. When you give with fear, when anxiety underlies your generosity, when attachment clings to what you're releasing even as your hands let it go, you're sending out energy that says, I can't afford this, I'm not sure there will be more, I'm doing this, but I'm scared. That frequency travels with the money, imprints itself on the exchange, and programs the return wave. And what comes back matches that frequency. Constrained, limited, barely enough to replace what you released, often arriving with difficulty or delay that mirrors the resistance you felt when giving. But watch the alchemy that occurs when you shift the emotion beneath the action. When you give with genuine confidence, when gratitude fills your chest as the money leaves your hands, when generosity flows from a knowing that there's always more coming, you're broadcasting an entirely different signal. You're telling the universe, I am abundant, I trust the flow, I know this will return multiplied. That frequency is what travels with your gift, your investment, your contribution. And the universe, always responding precisely to the signal it receives, doubles it, triples it, sometimes quadruples it, returning resources through unexpected channels with seemingly miraculous timing. This is the transformation that separates those who give generously yet remain poor from those whose generosity becomes the very mechanism of their wealth multiplication. Same action on the surface, completely different emotional frequency beneath, completely different results in manifestation. The Babylonians understood this so deeply that they would rather give nothing than give from the wrong emotional state, because they knew that giving from fear or obligation actually programs scarcity into your future experience. Better to wait until you can give from expansion, even if that means giving less frequently, because one gift sent with the right emotion multiplies more powerfully than 100 gifts sent with fear. The impact of this understanding on your financial reality is immediate and profound the moment you begin applying it consciously. Every transaction becomes an opportunity to program your future abundance. Every time money leaves your hands, whether paying for groceries or investing in your business or contributing to a cause, you're creating a return wave. And you get to determine, through the emotion you attach to the release, whether that wave returns as a trickle or a flood. Write abundant emotion if you're committing to transforming the emotional frequency behind every financial exchange you make. Travel east in your imagination to the ancient temples and monasteries where sages spent lifetimes mastering not the external world, but the internal landscape of consciousness. These weren't businessmen in the conventional sense, yet many of them oversaw vast resources, managed temple economies, and facilitated the flow of abundance through their communities with an expertise that would put modern financial advisors to shame. The fascinating thing is that you never heard them discussing financial strategies, investment tactics, or wealth-building techniques. Instead, they spoke of internal rights, of consciousness cultivation, of the sacred art of conscious creation through thought, word, and deed. Every action they took was deliberate, infused with awareness, treated as an act of manifestation. They understood that nothing in the physical world happens by accident or randomness. Everything that exists in material form first existed as thought, as intention, as consciousness seeking expression. So they didn't measure success with calculators or account books, though they certainly used those tools. They measured with intention. They evaluated through the lens of energetic alignment. They practiced what we might call energetic physics, the science of how consciousness shapes matter, how invisible frequencies create visible circumstances, how the internal world determines the external reality. Their approach might seem impractical to the modern mind, obsessed with metrics and data, but the results they achieved, the sustained abundance they maintained across centuries of political upheaval and economic change, speaks to the effectiveness of their methods. They knew something we've forgotten in our rush to optimize and strategize. They knew that the quality of your consciousness matters infinitely more than the quantity of your actions. One decision made from perfect alignment creates more value than 1,000 decisions made from scattered, fearful thinking. One transaction conducted with full presence and clear intention multiplies more powerfully than countless transactions executed mechanically without awareness. This is the transformation that's available when you shift from seeing wealth creation as primarily an external game of strategy and tactics, to recognizing it as fundamentally an internal practice of consciousness cultivation. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "Who must I become?" You stop seeking the right techniques and start embodying the right frequency. And paradoxically, when you make that shift, when you prioritize internal alignment over external manipulation, the external results improve dramatically, because you're finally working with the laws that actually govern manifestation rather than fighting against them. Now let's talk about something that will sound strange at first, but will revolutionize your financial reality once you truly understand and apply it. The law of double return doesn't activate just through gratitude, just through action, or just through any single practice or technique. It activates through something more comprehensive, more intimate, more transformative. It activates through conscious relationship with money itself. Think about your closest friendships, the relationships that nourish and sustain you. How do you treat those people? With respect, admiration, appreciation, confidence in their goodwill toward you. You enjoy their company, you celebrate their presence, you trust them, and because you relate to them this way, they want to be around you. The relationship strengthens and deepens over time. Money operates on the exact same principle. It's not an inanimate object or abstract concept. It's energy that responds to how you relate to it. When you treat money with respect, when you admire it not as something to worship, but as something to appreciate for the exchange and opportunity it facilitates, when you hold confidence that money is reliable and wants to flow to you, it responds by coming closer, staying longer, multiplying more readily. The relationship strengthens, the flow increases, the doubling accelerates. But when you look at money with fear, when anxiety colors every thought about your finances, when desperation underlies your attempts to attract it, money withdraws. Not because it's punishing you or because you're doing something wrong morally, but because energy always moves away from fear and toward love, away from contraction and toward expansion. This is simple energetics playing out in your financial reality. Change how you relate to money, and you change how money relates to you. Not eventually, immediately in the energetic realm, with physical manifestation following, as your sustained new relationship becomes your consistent reality. The hidden truth is that most people have an adversarial or fearful relationship with money without even realizing it. They see it as something difficult to get and easy to lose, something that causes stress and problems, something they need but can't trust. And money, responding to that relationship dynamic, behaves accordingly. It arrives with difficulty, disappears quickly, creates stress through its presence or absence. But when you consciously transform that relationship, when you begin treating money like a valued friend who you trust and appreciate, everything shifts. Leave trusted friend in the comments if you're ready to completely transform your relationship with money from this moment forward. One of the most paralyzing beliefs that keeps people stuck in scarcity is the idea that you need substantial money to make money, that wealth multiplication is only available to those who already have significant resources to work with. This belief stops people before they even start, creating a mental prison where they're waiting for some magical moment when they'll have enough to begin the journey toward doubling their wealth. But here's what the ancient wisdom teaches us, something that completely demolishes this limiting belief. Even with a single coin, even with the smallest amount you can imagine, correct vibration can multiply wealth. Because money doesn't follow numbers. Money follows energy. Think about a seed for a moment. A tiny acorn, something you could hold 100 of in your cupped hands, contains within it the potential for a massive oak tree that will produce thousands more acorns, each carrying the same exponential potential. The seed doesn't apologize for being small. It doesn't wait until it's bigger before it begins growing. It simply gets planted in fertile soil, receives consistent care and water, and unfolds according to its nature, which is multiplication. Your single coin, your small beginning, your modest starting point, works exactly the same way when you treat it with the right consciousness. The fertile soil is your elevated vibration, your abundance consciousness, your certainty that this small beginning contains infinite potential. The water is your consistent attention, your daily practice of relating to money with respect and trust, your unwavering faith in the principles you're now learning. And the growth? That happens naturally, inevitably, as a mathematical result of correct conditions being maintained. You don't have to know how the seed becomes the tree. You just have to plant it properly and trust the intelligence built into the system. The universe knows how to multiply a single coin into abundance, just as surely as nature knows how to grow an acorn into an oak. This is why some people start with nothing and build empires, while others inherit fortunes and lose everything. The amount you begin with is irrelevant. The consciousness you bring to that amount is everything. Stop waiting for more to start practicing the principles of wealth multiplication. Start now with whatever you have, treating it as the seed of your future abundance, and watch what unfolds. Now here's a distinction that will save you years of exhausting, unproductive struggle. There's a massive difference between action and effort, between doing things and forcing things, between movement that flows from alignment and activity that's driven by anxiety. Most people confuse these completely, and that confusion keeps them trapped in cycles of burnout and disappointment. They believe that working more hours automatically translates to earning more money. They think that saying yes to every opportunity, regardless of how it feels, will accelerate their progress. They assume that the harder they push, the faster results will come. And they're genuinely confused when this approach leads to exhaustion, frustration, and minimal financial progress. The hidden truth they're missing is that money doesn't respond to effort. Money responds to frequency. Money flows better, faster, more abundantly when your action is aligned with correct vibration than when your action is driven by pressure, desperation, or anxiety. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how sometimes you can work all day and accomplish almost nothing of real value, yet other times a single conversation or decision made in 10 minutes changes everything? The difference isn't in the time invested or the effort expended. The difference is in the alignment, in whether that action was flowing from your highest consciousness or being forced from your fearful ego. Aligned action feels different in your body. It has ease even when it's challenging. It has flow even when it requires focus. There's a rightness to it that you can sense, an internal yes that accompanies the external doing. Forced effort, on the other hand, feels heavy, resistant, like you're pushing a boulder uphill. And while both might look similar from the outside, the energetic signature is completely different. And energy is what determines the results you create. The person taking aligned action magnetizes opportunities, attracts help, generates synchronicities that accelerate progress. The person taking forced action depletes their resources, repels support, and often works twice as hard for half the results. The transformation happens when you give yourself permission to prioritize alignment over activity, to choose quality of action over quantity of effort, to trust that doing less from the right state will produce more than doing more from the wrong state. This isn't an excuse for laziness or passivity. This is strategic wisdom that allows you to work with universal laws rather than against them, to multiply your impact while actually reducing your struggle. Drop aligned, not forced, if you're ready to transform how you take action in your financial life. The ancient masters, whether in Babylon, Egypt, Tibet, or India, all converged on a principle so simple that most people dismiss it as too basic to be powerful. Yet this principle explains more about financial success and failure than any complex strategy or sophisticated technique ever could. Flow multiplies where there's clarity and gratitude. These aren't separate factors. They work together as a unified force. And when both are present, wealth multiplication becomes not just possible, but inevitable. When either is absent, struggle and scarcity persist no matter how hard you work or how many opportunities you chase. Clarity is about knowing exactly what you want and why you want it, not in vague general terms, but with precise specificity. Most people say they want more money, but that's not clarity. That's a wish, a hope, a general desire that lacks the focused power necessary to direct energy. Clarity means knowing the exact amount you're calling in, understanding how it will serve your life and the lives of others, seeing in your mind's eye the tangible form your wealth will take. Without this clarity, your energy scatters in 1,000 directions, chasing random opportunities, following conflicting impulses, never building the concentrated force necessary to break through into new financial territory. You waste energy, burn through your resources, exhaust yourself, and wonder why nothing significant changes despite all your effort. Gratitude, on the other hand, is the current itself, the flow that carries abundance to you and through you. When gratitude is genuine, when it permeates your consciousness not as an occasional practice, but as your default way of perceiving reality, you become a channel that energy loves to move through. But without gratitude, even if you have perfect clarity about what you want, you block the current. You create resistance in the flow. It's like trying to fill a cup while simultaneously holding your hand over the opening. The universe is pouring, but you're preventing yourself from receiving through your lack of appreciation for what's already arriving. This is the hidden explanation for why so many people struggle intensely yet remain trapped in scarcity. They have effort, they have strategies, they have goals, but they lack either clarity, so their energy disperses without impact, or they lack gratitude, so they block the very flow they're trying to attract. Often they lack both, creating a situation where massive activity produces minimal results, where years of hard work lead to barely incremental progress, where burnout becomes the norm and abundance remains a distant dream. The transformation happens the moment you bring both clarity and gratitude into alignment. Suddenly, the same amount of energy produces exponentially greater results because it's focused rather than scattered and flowing rather than blocked. Now let's talk about the spark that ignites the entire multiplication process, because understanding this will show you why some people's manifestations remain fantasies while others materialize with stunning speed. Visualization is useful. Desire is important. Having a clear vision of what you want to create matters. But these alone are not enough to trigger the law of double return, to activate the universe's response, to begin the actual doubling of your money. What's missing in most approaches to manifestation is the element that transforms potential into reality, the spark that lights the fire. That element is emotion combined with coherent action. For the universe to double your money, you must create coherence between your internal state and your external behavior. Every small step you take, when it's genuinely aligned with your vision rather than compensating for your doubt, creates an echo in the energetic field. That echo gets amplified by the law of double return, producing results that are disproportionate to the size of the action. This is why you sometimes see people make seemingly minor decisions that lead to massive breakthroughs. It's not that the decision itself was so significant, it's that the decision was made with perfect coherence, every level of their being saying yes simultaneously, creating a concentrated burst of creative power that the universe amplifies exponentially. Each decision aligned with your vision, Each action taken from your elevated state rather than your fearful ego. Each moment where emotion and movement work together rather than contradicting each other. These become amplification points. The universe takes that coherent signal and multiplies it, returning circumstances, opportunities, and yes, actual money that match the frequency of your aligned action. This is the practical application of everything we've been discussing, where consciousness meets the material world and produces tangible transformation. Right, coherent spark. If you understand that your emotions combined with aligned action create the multiplication effect you've been seeking, here's something that will either liberate you completely or challenge everything you've believed about limitation and possibility. Money never, under any circumstances, denies someone who truly understands its internal law. Read that again and let it penetrate beyond your conscious mind into the deeper places where your actual beliefs reside. Never. This isn't motivational hype or positive thinking designed to make you feel better temporarily. This is a statement of universal law, as reliable as the law of gravity, as predictable as the cycles of day and night. The universe always responds to correct vibration, always, without exception, without favoritism, without judgment about your past or your current circumstances. Your task isn't to create something that doesn't exist or to become worthy of something you're currently unworthy of. Your task is infinitely simpler and infinitely more profound. You must remember what you've always known beneath the layers of conditioning. You must activate the natural magnetism that's been dormant, covered over by fear and false beliefs, and you must allow the flow that's always been trying to reach you to finally move through you without resistance. Remember, activate, allow. These three movements, practiced consistently with genuine commitment, transform everything. The remembering happens as you shed the programming that convinced you wealth was scarce, that you had to struggle, that abundance was for others, but not for you. The activation happens as you consciously choose thoughts, emotions, and actions that align with prosperity consciousness rather than scarcity thinking. The allowing happens as you release the grip of control, the need to know exactly how things will unfold, the demand that money arrive through specific channels you've predetermined. Together, these three create the conditions for doubling, for multiplication, for the kind of financial transformation that looks miraculous from outside, but is simply law operating from inside. Now we've reached the point where everything we've explored throughout this journey comes together into a unified understanding, a complete picture of how wealth actually works at the deepest level. The final secret, the synthesis that makes sense of all the pieces we've examined, is beautifully simple yet profound in its implications. Wealth is not something you have. Wealth is something you are. It's a vibration you embody, a frequency you maintain, a state of being you inhabit regardless of temporary circumstances. And when you truly embody this vibration, when it becomes your consistent reality rather than an occasional experience, everything you touch begins to multiply. This isn't about what you do, though action matters. It's about who you are while you're doing it. The same action taken from scarcity consciousness produces minimal results. The same action taken from abundance embodiment produces exponential returns. It's about how you think, with every thought either reinforcing limitation or expanding possibility. It's about how you feel, with every emotion either constricting your field or amplifying your magnetism. It's about how you act, with every decision either moving you toward your vision or keeping you circled in familiar patterns. Each thought of abundance rather than lack, each emotion of gratitude rather than complaint, each conscious action rather than automatic reaction, each habit that elevates your energy rather than depletes it, all of these create an invisible field around you. This field is real, measurable, potent. It's not visible to physical eyes, but it's as substantial as any physical structure. This field interacts with the quantum field of infinite possibility, collapsing potential into form, organizing circumstances to match your vibration, attracting people and opportunities that resonate with your frequency. Within this field, money doesn't just arrive, it doubles. Opportunities don't just appear, they expand. Resources don't just maintain, they multiply. This is the law operating at full power, and you've now been given the keys to activate it consciously rather than waiting for random moments when it works accidentally. The transformation from wherever you are now to doubled money, to multiplied wealth, to financial freedom isn't a distant destination requiring years of struggle. It's an identity shift that can begin this very moment and start producing results as quickly as you can stabilize in the new frequency. Everything you need is already within you. The ancient secret has been revealed. The question now is simply whether you'll apply it. Comment, "I am the vibration," if you're ready to embody wealth consciousness and watch your reality transform to match. If you're still here with me right now, having traveled through these ancient secrets and transformative principles, that tells me something important about you. You're not just looking for quick fixes or surface-level answers. You're genuinely ready for the kind of deep transformation that actually changes your financial reality from the inside out. And that readiness is exactly what makes everything we've discussed not just possible, but inevitable for you. I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because what we're building here goes far beyond single videos or isolated concepts. We're creating a community of people who understand that true wealth is an inside job, who are willing to do the internal work that most people skip, who recognize that consciousness creates reality and are ready to apply that understanding practically. The content I share here is designed to support that journey, to give you the tools, the insights, and the reminders you need to stay aligned with your highest financial potential. And here's what I'd love from you right now. Leave a comment below saying, "This message was meant for me," if you feel like this. Video found you at exactly the right moment. If something we discussed today resonated in a way that tells you this isn't coincidence. I read these comments, and there's something powerful about declaring your readiness, about putting your intention into words and sharing it with others who are on the same path. If this content created value for you, if something shifted while you were watching, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more people discover these principles, but more than that, it's a way of completing the energetic circuit, of saying yes to what you've received and allowing it to flow outward to others who need it. Before you go, there's another video right here that takes what we've covered today even deeper. It explores the practical application of these principles in ways that will surprise you. Click on it and continue this journey with me. The momentum you've built by making it to the end of this video is valuable. Don't let it dissipate. Keep moving forward while the energy is alive in you. Thank you for being here. Your financial transformation is already beginning.